Hello and good morning from lockdown London. I'm Charlie Gibson and you are watching Core Finance. Now, you might have thought that life for a junior mining company in the current time, and you know what I mean when I say the current time, might be fairly quiet. Well, perhaps, but there are some very notable exceptions about this, and it's by no means true that all activity has dried up altogether. In fact, it is by no means true whatsoever. One of the very notable exceptions is Blencowe Resources, and it in fact just last week raised £2 million in the London market at sixpence a share, and to invest on its Orom-Cross graphite deposit in Uganda. Now, joining me all the way from sunny Perth is the company's chief executive, Mike Ralston. Mike, very good morning from London town time to you there in Perth. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us all about the project.
Orom-Cross is a sensational graphite project. It has several key differentiating points which make it stand out. It's a project that we came across some 18 months ago. We worked out how to put this into Blencowe. Blencowe itself was a small shell structure that had been set up for the purpose of bringing in a resource project, and we were out there searching for something a little bit special, a little bit different. Essentially, we came across this. We did the deal. We've done an extensive process of due diligence and ultimately completed the deal last week. So it's all been a fairly long road, but it's now been successfully concluded, and just as you say, with some new cash and ready to go out there and develop this project going forward.
Who is we for these purposes?
Well, we being the company, obviously, the founders of the companies, the seed shareholders. We did an IPO on Blencowe in April last year, announced the deal to acquire Orom in May, went into suspension pending all the due diligence and pending the raising of capital and everything that has to go into completing the deal. And it's taken us the better part of a year to get it all done. But I think we dotted our I's and crossed our T's. I think it's very, very important, particularly under the current circumstances and the market that we live in, to make sure that you've got something that really does stand out and it ticks all the boxes, as opposed to having a few minor points that you think may be of little consequence now, but they can come and hurt you later on. So we've done a very thorough due diligence, and I think it'll pay off in the long run.
So do you have a team with you with whom you've done this sort of working up a project before, or is this your first team doing this in this particular way?
No, the chairman is Cameron Pearce. Cam has done several of these before. His last was Emerson, which has got a very successful potash project in Morocco, and that's gone pretty well. And prior to that, done a few together as well in London. So we know the model. I think the best part of the London model is that you can keep the structure very tight. The Australian equivalent as a listed company requires 300 shareholders as a minimum, whereas in London you can have a lot less, which just means that you can control those shareholders in a way that allows for the project to develop without mass market activity that can create its own problems. So the structure is definitely one of the key advantages for Blencowe, and we really wanted to keep it tight so that all the parties who came in and have come in on this latest capital raise are truly aligned to the same end goal, and that is to develop the project through the next couple of phases so that everybody associated can see the value, because there's huge value to unlock, and we just need the time and obviously the support of our shareholders to go and do that.
So you own 100% of the project, and you just raised £2 million. So let's say $2.5 million. I would suggest to you that $2.5 million, it'll probably keep things going for about a year thereabouts. But if you're going into a drilling program, you can burn through $2.5 million pretty quickly. Will you need to come back to the market? Well,
luckily for us, two things. Firstly, Orom-Cross was quite extensively drilled out and some trenching work done before we acquired it. So there's quite a lot of historical data. But we are in the middle, in fact, well, not in the middle, in the early stages of a second phase drilling program now that's going to bring it to a maiden chalk resource. And that's 59 holes for about 1,800 meters of diamond drilling. But the beauty of it at Orom is because the graphite's presenting from surface, we're literally only drilling down to 30 meters. So you can get a lot of holes in very quickly for a small amount of money. So we're anticipating approximately 700,000 pounds for that drilling campaign, and to get it done pretty quickly by this time next month. Hopefully will be completed, subject to the lockdowns actually being lifted, which I'm hoping they will be in the next couple of days. But that leaves us a fair bit of money to get on and do some of the other work, which in parallel we'll be doing will be some metallurgical test work to understand what our end product will look like. And thereafter, once we do understand that better, we'll be embarking on a feasibility study to get a PFS done, hopefully by the end of the year, but maybe into the early part of 2021.
Where is it important that these lockdowns are lifted? You alluded to the lockdowns being lifted there as being pretty important. Is that in wherever you're doing your metallurgical testing, or is it in Uganda? Is it in London, where your financial markets are? Where's it important that these are lifted?
Well, probably the answer is all of the above, because I guess the more lockdowns lifted, the better the circumstance. But in particular, Uganda, where they went into lockdown late March, we're told that they will be coming out of that, or the president's going to be announcing tomorrow, and thereafter we can remobilize, because we had started a drilling program in March. We wanted to hit the ground running once the deal was completed, to show the market that we really were moving as quickly as possible to get this value curve, to get Orom up the value curve. So definitely in Uganda, but in parallel, we are doing metallurgical test work in South Africa with a company called Matanza, who are experts there. They did our first phase work in the due diligence last year, and they also went into lockdown. South Africa's been under about 6 or 7 weeks of total lockdown since March, and obviously that impacts in terms of getting samples to labs and all the work that needs to be done there. So South Africa have partially lifted their lockdown last Friday, enough to get us moving again. It would be obviously nice to get those restrictions just further lifted and allow business to continue as normal. But we're definitely working within the constraints, firstly to make sure that everyone's safe, that's very important, but secondly to make sure that we can keep work programs moving.
You mentioned historic work there that's been completed on the project, and you said that some quite extensive drilling and trenching has already been completed. And I think out in the public domain, there's a figure of 3.7 billion tons for the deposit. I'm assuming that's non-JORC, and that's
Definitely
done from historical work. But just tell us a little bit about that historical work, what it found, and why the operator at the time then didn't take the project forward.
Well, that 3.7 billion number is an estimate, because if you were to try and drill this out to a JORC, you could probably spend literally tens of millions of dollars and many, many, many years, because the deposit itself is approximately 19 kilometers long and about 1 to 1.5 kilometers wide. So if you were to put the spacing to put that into JORC resource, it would get to become incredibly complicated and time consuming. Whereas one can only utilize a very, very small fraction of that graphite in terms of what the market can absorb. So our drilling at the moment is anticipated to drill out to an indicated resource the quantity of graphite that we anticipate that we'll need for our first 10 years of mine life. So we can get on and do the feasibility study based on that. So we've picked an area that we think is predominant in terms of the grade, in terms of the ability to mine it from surface or near to surface, in terms of the quality of the graphite, infrastructure, etc. And we've gone in there. We secured a mining license last year for the project, which is a key advantage. And we're basically moving as fast as we can to get to that decision to mine. So it's the work that was done before was done by an Australian company called Consolidated Resources Africa. They did a great deal of work in certain areas, and in particular to get that mining license, which is very important. But at the same time, they never took it through to a JORC resource, which is obviously something is required to get it through to that next feasibility stage. So that became our priority. And understanding your end product in terms of graphite is critical, because there are many different types of graphite, ranging from different end concentrates, ranging from different flake sizes, and all of them have different usages. And so at the end of the day, we need to understand what our end product looks like, so that we can ultimately go out there and anticipate where we're going to sell it, for how much we can sell it, and what the market is that we're going to sell it into. So that met test work is important. But we got through a first phase of that in our due diligence, and it looked pretty good. And by pretty good, I'm anticipating that we can get up to a 95 to 97% graphite concentrate with very low impurities and predominantly large to jumbo flakes, which are the particular quality of graphite that can secure the best prices in the market. So the next phase is to determine that we can deliver that, and in particular to an 80% concentrate recovery. And at the end of the day, once we've got that, we'll be able to move forward into feasibility study.
So you mentioned the flake size there. A key component of the graphite market generally, or a key growth area, is the electrification of cars, isn't it? And it's graphite as a component of the batteries which are going to be installed in the cars. So, and is that the market that you're looking to sell your graphite into?
It's one of the markets, because we will definitely have some graphite that does focus on that particular area. In particular, that's the small fines end of the market, where, as you say, a better quality of graphite gets processed through to become a key component in the anode in the lithium-ion batteries that goes into these electric vehicles. And it is anticipated that that will be a very large growth market going forward. Just exactly when that's due to explode, because there have been numerous predictions over the last 5 to 10 years, and they haven't quite taken place as yet, is anybody's guess. And I suspect that the current coronavirus impact will probably delay that further. But I think it's generally felt by most people that that market will become much larger going forward. And ultimately, it's going to be something that utilizes a lot of the graphite that we and many other graphite producers can fulfill. But at the other end of the scale, in the large to jumbo flakes, there's a growing market for that particular product, in particular as flame retardants in the expandables market. And because it's in much less supply and it's a higher quality, the prices are generally much higher, and they range literally between $400 and $2,500 per ton at the moment between the two ends of the market. So there's significant difference, and we're hoping to have about 50-60% of our product in that larger flake size that we'll be able to push into that market. So I think our anticipation is that we'll have several markets that we're selling different types of graphite into, but we're definitely going to be focusing on the higher end of the market in terms of the larger flakes as our priority.
And in terms of the destination of your end market, does this graphite go out of Mombasa and then off to Asia? Is that the plan?
Yes, at the moment, that's where it would go, although we won't be in production for a couple of years, so anything can change. There's definitely a lot of talk at the moment about European auto manufacturers teaming together with European battery manufacturers to build these large lithium-ion battery plants going forward. They are perhaps a little bit concerned that they are too dependent upon China, and events over the last couple of months have made people realize that that might not be the greatest thing to be too reliant. So there is a European lean at the moment in terms of the EV batteries market, and I think the states are also going to lift their performance as well in terms of building those same plants. So at the moment, definitely we'd be exporting it out of Mombasa port, sending it to Asia. In 3 years' time, when we anticipate being up in production, who knows? Again, it could be multiple different parties that we're selling into in both.
Tell us a little bit about operating in Uganda. Investors will be familiar with other countries in the region. They're almost certainly familiar with Tanzania. They're almost certainly familiar with the DRC. They may to some extent be somewhat familiar with Kenya, but Uganda is, I'm going to suggest, slightly off the beaten track as far as mining investment is concerned.
Well, I lived in Kenya for 6 years before I came out to Australia, so I know East Africa pretty well, and I was born in Zimbabwe and raised there, so I know Africa generally pretty good as well. So I think, in my experience, East Africa is one of the best places to do business. The people there are English speaking, generally, obviously have the English background, being former British colonies and protectorates. They are excellent workers. The governments there are very keen to promote business and to promote mining in particular. We found incredibly good in the short time that we've been there. We found the government support to be very, very good, and I believe that in comparison to many other African countries, some of which you mentioned before, I think we've got a really, really good location. And again, that's a key differentiator for us in choosing this particular project over others that we looked at. It certainly would concern me that some 50 to 60% of the world's graphite is predicted or forecast to come out of southern Africa, in terms of places like Madagascar, Mozambique, Tanzania. And those are higher risk places. They're definitely difficult to do business. And I think that, we would like to sort of present ourselves as a supply chain diversification of some sort to parties that, might want to be ensuring that they get a much more secure location to get graphite for a long period of time going forward, particularly with a deposit that can be upscaled to any size, because we've got so much graphite there. And it definitely represents a great opportunity to work with one or more key players in the market to go forward. So Uganda for us is definitely a plus. Possibly the only disadvantage, I guess, as you said, is it's landlocked. Having said that, there are literally many trucks that drive into Uganda, bringing in everything almost every day, and many of them return quite empty. So there's a lot of scope for us to put product onto those trucks, moving them, and ultimately over the longer haul, there's going to be a standard gauge railway line all the way from Kampala to Mombasa. It's about halfway completed, and we'll be able to utilize that in terms of rail. So there are options going forward, but at the moment we're considering moving product by truck, by road, and it's doable, because basically everything moves from there through Mombasa to go out to the world anyway. So there's definitely a tried and tested means by which they get product to market.
And tell us a little bit about the coronavirus situation. We never hear about coronavirus in Africa. We sometimes hear a little bit about it in South Africa, but by and large, I think it'd be fair to say, of all the continents, all the populated continents in the world, certainly Africa has been the least hit. But I wonder within that, just tell us a little bit about the situation in Uganda at the moment.
Well, it's difficult, because I don't pretend to be some medical expert that knows all about what's going on in Uganda regarding coronavirus. But at the moment, anyway, they seem to have very few cases. They've got a very young population. Maybe that's helping in some way. But it does have the potential to get out of hand, mainly because they don't have a very strong medical system or welfare system to support the medical aid for people that get sick. So we're definitely going to have to keep an eye on it. But at the same time, they are coming out of lockdown in the next couple of days, because the president obviously believes that they've got a handle on it. And I guess you have to take that into consideration and move forward based upon that. But look, we're all living in interesting times, and we're all going to have to just keep an eye on this and just react to it as we go forward. We're in a better situation at the moment, because we're not producing. We're actually just still exploring and developing. We've got a number of local partners and partnerships there that we can fall back on, who will be able to continue to drill, to be able to work with our partnerships and the government and everybody else in country, and to be able to continue the work that we've started. So we're not slowing down. We're not halted because of this or because of anything else. But if it obviously extrapolates out of control in any way, it's going to change things. But I think that happen everywhere. So we're just going to all have to keep our eye on it and see where we go.
But officially, at the moment, at any rate, things actually are looking pretty reasonable. Would that be a fair summary?
Yeah, I don't know the exact numbers, but they are low. They are very low. People may say that's because there's not enough testing. I really don't know, but all I can say is that from what I can see, the numbers are looking pretty good, okay. And they've kept a lid on it.
So, Mike, I'll allow you to sort of exercise some of your wilder dreams in this particular question. But with the following wind and all things going well for you, where would you like to see Blencowe in, say, 2 to 3 years' time?
In terms of the project or in terms of the company?
Both.
Both. Well, at the moment, it's not to say we won't pick up another project, but at the moment, the Orom-Cross project is our primary focus. So for now, anyway, over the next 12 months, we went out there with a prospectus telling people we were going to put in money, that we we're going to develop this project, and that's what we're going to do. We've hit the ground running, as I said, even prior to the deal being completed, because we anticipate that it would. We started drilling, we started net test work, and we intend to complete that as quickly as possible. So within the next 3 to 4 months, we should have a maiden JORC resource. We should have our end product detailed in terms of completion of that net test work, and we should be able to move forward into a feasibility study stage. And ultimately, our plan is to get this into a decision to mine sometime by the end of next year, so that we can utilize the following year to start raising money, to start looking to go and order long lead time items and start moving towards first production as quickly as we can. So all of these are step-by-step goals. I don't think it makes a lot of sense to be thinking too far ahead and trying to overstep where we are right now. But it's a great project. It's got some very, very unique features, and we obviously think it's got an awful lot of value that we can unlock going forward, and it's our intention to do that. So in terms of the company as Blencowe, it's all a product of how well we develop it, how much we push that message out to the market. We've got a good structure so that we'll be able to keep it nice and tight, and raise enough cash going forward to do all we need to do to get this thing moving. And so far it's going pretty good, but we've got to keep working hard, because it's a challenging world we live in, and it always has been at our end of the market. But we know we've got something of value, and we've just got to do the work to make it to find that value and to show the market.
The feasibility study that you talk about, is that a full definitive feasibility study, what they call bankable, or is that as a pre-feasible?
No, it won't be at the first stage. I mean, we can't go from where we are now straight into a definitive study. That's just not possible. But I think what we will be able to do is go into a pre-feasibility study, and then we'll be able to jump from there into definitive study. So it's definitely going to be a two-step process. But at the same time, we can move pretty quickly within it, because we'll have the relationships in Uganda to be able to move from one stage to the next quite quickly. There'll only be a limited amount of further drilling that needs to be done. We intend to get all the process flow done in terms of plant design in the PFS. So it shouldn't take too long, but we can't miss a step by jumping too quickly, and obviously find that we've missed an important step or stage that comes back to bite us. So we as much as we want to move quickly, we've also got to do it properly.
So definitive feasibility study, let's say end of 21, finance raised by whatever means available and possible, and then how long a period of construction?
Well, for a project like this, you typically take 12 months, and maybe 18 months in total to do the capital raising, the finance raising, and the drilling. So yeah, somewhere around about 18 months to do both. Obviously, there's a production decision in amongst all of that, which comes out of the definitive study. But somewhere around about 2023, 2024, depending on the timing, we would like to be in production. And that's when we anticipate the market's going to be moving into a bit of a shortfall in terms of particular types of graphite. Certainly in that EV market, there's an anticipated shortfall. And we want to be there ready to produce a quality product at that period.
Do you have any relationships with any potential off-takers at this stage?
Not at the moment, because we just don't know what our end product looks like, and there's no point going and talking to people. The first thing they're going to ask us is, what have you got? What does your product look like? Give us your specification sheet, and we haven't got that. So that's what the met test work is going to give us, and hopefully by the end of, in the next couple of months, we'll be able to provide that, and then we can start looking around and finding who's interested and starting those preliminary discussions.
Okay, granted many steps to go, but with the following wins, production 23, 24, that sort of thing?
Definitely, that would be the aim. There may be opportunities to do a small pilot stage or pilot plant and get something running a little bit earlier. That's a decision that the board has to look at as we go forward. Does it make sense to do it that way? But if we were to build a plant of the sort of size and scale that we're anticipating, would be those sort of dates, yes.
All right, Mike. Well, we wish you the very best of luck. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Mike Ralston there, the Chief Executive of Blencowe Resources, talking about the Orom-Cross project, which his company is looking to develop in Uganda. I'm afraid that's all we got time for from me, Charlie Gibson. We will be back very soon, though, on Core Finance, looking to bring you more such investment ideas. But until then, you have a very capital day.